the rate at which what's expanding? Okay, so the universe is expanding. Does it feel like it's expanding? I don't feel like I'm expanding. But that's what you're telling me is, anybody else feeling like, yeah, I had a heavy breakfast? So what does it mean that we're expanding? That seems like a strange thing to say.
Just like discovering fossils and like evolution, like noticing the way that things have evolved and kind of guessing whether they started.
Okay, they're guessing. Scientists just throwing out wild guesses like, you know what, there's some bones here. I'll say 13.8 billion. Right? That'll come in a second. That's more like earth science-based things. But here, why is that the beginning?
Math and measurements made about the universe by telescopes and various scientific instruments.
Okay, so scientists say that they built some tools and used some math, and you guys are like, seems legit. That basically seems legit. I just want to point this out. Just because somebody's wearing a white lab coat doesn't mean that you should trust what they say. You know, you can just like buy a white lab coat, right? Like you can, just because you have the costume doesn't mean anything, right? I usually point this out. This is going to be the dark part of the today's lecture, but I mean, isn't it at least possible that on the first day, like you guys don't know me, nobody asked me for my papers or anything. On the very first day, isn't it at least possible that I waited out in the parking lot, saw the real professor for this class, killed him, threw him in the trunk of the car, walked in here, started talking a bunch of jibba jabba about some religious studies, and you guys were like, yeah, definitely the professor. Seems like he knows what he's talking about. Now all of a sudden the 25 bucks thing makes a whole lot of sense, right? What, I mean, your trust based on somebody wearing a white lab coat or because they're saying certain things isn't necessarily well-founded. It is up to you to think critically about, like, just because they have the white lab coat on doesn't mean it's true. Do I really believe that? What's the basis for thinking that, right? So I really am the professor. This is going to be a thing everybody's going to be like, I don't know. I really am the professor for this class, I swear. But there is a question here about, like, where is this evidence just because somebody's like math and telescopes? And you're like, yeah, right. So you're right that the very Big Bang Theory here, 13.8 billion years ago is where this all starts. But what's the basis? What's the observable evidence, right? The problem in part is this is unseen, right? Just like our religious definition, these things are unseen. You can't see them in the same way. You need instruments of some sort to help you to have the observable evidence. That's at least the part of this theory. So here is the basis of this theory. First of all, I am not like a space scientist. That's really true, okay? So this part of the lecture is really meant to be an overview just to make sure we're all kind of on the same base about the scientific theories and how they go against some of the religions later on, right? So the reason that we believe this has to do with the way that light is a wave. Everybody's familiar with that idea? Light's a wave, right? Sound is also a wave, but light's a wave, right? So if you look at light as a wave, it can have different frequency, right? There are peaks and troughs. Sound as well. Sound might be a little easier for us to deal with the differentiation between these two because we have an experiential difference here. So here's my example of this. So you're standing beside train tracks, not on the train tracks, beside the train tracks. Get off the train tracks, it's dangerous. Train's coming towards you, leans on his horn, probably because you're too close to the train tracks. Take another step back. So you're beside the train tracks at the same distance. It leans on its horn, and as it comes towards you, it sounds one way, meow. And then as it passes you by, and relative to your position and its motion, it sounds different, meow. It's my impersonation of a train. Pretty good, right? When it's coming towards you, the waves are one way, right? And when it's going away, they're different, right? And so experientially, the sound sounds different. The sound wave sounds different. Same thing with light, right? We know this with, this is the same way that like Doppler radar works, right? You send out two pings of light, and if they're moving away, you'll get the meow, right? Depending on which one it is, and then on your Doppler, it'll show it either moving away or moving towards. That's the basis of it. The idea here is that if you were using telescopes, you look at all of the oldest stars by their composition that are observable. You look at all of them, and as you look at them, they're all moving outward from one spot. Right? They're all moving outward. And if you were to plug all of these into, say, a computer program and press rewind, they all come back to one spot in the night sky. Right? How long would it take for them all to get back to this one point? 13.8 billion years. So how old is the known universe? 13.8 billion years. Right? But there's some critical problems here. What caused the Big Bang? What originally made it happen? We don't know, right? There's nothing to observe for us to build a theory off of. That is what we have to observe. Without that, we don't really have anything to say, well, that was the catalyst. Did somebody just walk in and was like, or, I mean, maybe there's a pyro out there, I don't know, whatever. But, I mean, we don't really have answers. So for people who say maybe it's divinely created or something like that, from the point before the Big Bang, we don't really know what it was. It's all supposition at that point. We can suppose, but we don't have any observable evidence to build the theory off of, right? So when we answer the question for the mythos of science, where does it all come from? We can look at this observable evidence, but then beyond that, there's nothing to observe, so there's really nothing to build off of. So it's one of the mysteries we have of origins. What caused the Big Bang? The ultimate answer is, at least right now, we don't know. We don't have observable evidence. Does that make sense? Okay. So, before you leave today, make sure that you log into the quiz and put this in as the quiz code. There are 2 questions. One of them is about the definition of religion, and the other is about this beginning of the mythos of science. So make sure you answer it before you leave, and I will see you on Wednesday. And for those of you who brought $25, spend it wisely.